From Dialog, heading the BI Analytics team. So on behalf of the Dialog team, I'd like to welcome you all. So just to give some quick briefing about the program, because before start the session, this program is organized with the support of Dialog and Asiata Analytics teams. Joanna is from Asiata Analytics teams. In Dialog also, the analytics team plus Idea Mart teams, they involved for the organizing this event. And the Huawei and Microsoft, they are also partner with us to arrange this wonderful event. So as you know, data, if you know, data will create it will be a fuel for the future. It will consider as a fuel. So if you got the chance to hear one speech from Microsoft CEO, he mentioned it will create the fourth industrial revolutions. So I believe in your organizations also, you are putting a lot of effort to create the data science capabilities, and it will, I'm sure it will evolve rapidly during the next few years. So why this? You may know why we organize this event from Dialog. So there are multiple reasons. From the Dialog perspective, the Dialog in Sri Lanka, when it comes to Sri Lanka, we own the largest data sets. So I proudly say we own the largest data sets because we have the largest number of customers, highest number of customers, and we generate a lot of records. So when it comes to data science practice, we adapt to the data science a long time ago, around 2004. We started our first data warehouse around 2004. And then we have done tremendous evaluations on from MIS to BI to analytics. And we are using a lot of analytics, and we use our decisions based on data for our day-to-day operations. So the one challenge we are facing now, we are talking about the data, we are talking about the big data. There are a lot of buzzwords, there may be a lot of technology, but our personal experience, my personal experience, the technology, apart from the technology, human is facing a significant factor to success of any data science. So the one objective to see what are the potentials available in the Sri Lankan context as one of the objectives of this program. At the same time, as a Sri Lankans, I believe we are famous for the high-skilled labors in software industry. So to see whether we can increase or we can improve our knowledge among the data science community. So when we try to organize this event, we face a couple of challenges. The first challenge we face how to get the registrations. I believe we got quite success on that because we received more than 450 registrations, and we put a test the shortlisted. But based on the test, we identify 22 teams right now. And the other challenge, although there are a lot of data, whether we can expose it, because when it comes to any telco operator, we have call detail records, we may have the customer information. It's a big challenge. So what we did for the Datathon, we anomalize up to a certain level, and fortunately the Microsoft team helped us to give the infrastructure which allow not to copy or not to download the data from that environment. So today demonstrations mainly about the virtual environment, the Microsoft planning to offer you for the Datathon. And the other challenge we face, how to define a theme. So there are a lot of themes came to our mind. Finally, we decided to go ahead with Smart City because when in Kambukalam, we talk about a planned city and how to define the roads, how to define our traffic, that sort of things. So we try to find some appropriate data sets to define a smart city. I'm sure it will be eye-opening for any industry, any organization to take in the future. So finally, without taking much time, I would like to hand over sessions to Mr. Dinesh Priyanka, who is the MVP in Microsoft, to take you through the sessions. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening to everyone. So I'm not going to use the mic. I believe that everyone can hear me, right? Yes? Okay. So we are going to talk about, or we are going to discuss the virtual machine that have been given by Azure or the Microsoft Azure that can be used for all sort of data science experiments. Before we start this, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Dinesh Priyankara. I've been working in this industry for last 18, 19 years. This is completely on data. Some of the details have been given with slides, so I don't want to spend time on this. But one thing I need to highlight, when it's come to data, big data, business intelligence, data warehousing, that's what I've been doing for last 10, 12 years. So, even though I have spent that number of years on this, there can be a situation where I see something unknown to me. So when we do this session, we need to make sure that this is going to be sort of interactive. You don't need to wait till the end of the session in order to get things clarified. So you can ask questions, you can get your doubts cleared. If you need a clarification, we can stop and when we can discuss. If I feel like it needs something, it needs a sort of lengthy discussion, we'll take it offline. Okay? So you might ask something completely unknown to me. In that case, I will not be able to give you the answer immediately, but I'll try my best to give you the answer within a couple of days. Okay, I'll tell you the way of contacting me or reach me. Right. So that's about me. So let's talk about Azure first, because that's what you are going to use for doing all sort of your experiments. I know that there are 21 teams, so you'll be having 21 virtual machines. But before we start with these virtual machines, we need to know what is Azure. I believe that everyone knows about cloud computing. Yes or no? Yes, right. Have you worked with virtual machines, not in the cloud, on-prem virtual machines? Yes? You have experience with virtual machines, right? Yes or no? So have you worked with any cloud environment? Microsoft, Google, AWS, any environment? Yes or no? Yes. So in that case, you are really familiar with cloud environment. You are familiar with virtual machine. We don't need to discuss about that part. Okay. How about Microsoft Azure Cloud Platform? Just raise your hand if you have experience with Microsoft Azure. Okay. So I can see 30%, 40%. So in that case, I'll quickly take you through with certain set of slides that explain what is Azure and what sort of things available. I will spend about 5-10 minutes max on that. And then we'll be moving to the virtual machines. Okay, right. So when it's come to Azure, that's Microsoft Cloud Platform that have been established or set with somewhere around 54 regions. So you can get your environment set up. You can get all the services available with this Azure with all these regions. So for example, if you want to get, let's say, one of the database services as the software as a service, you can simply go into the Azure portal and get the environment created. Okay, you can select the closest region for us. When it comes to Sri Lanka, we have to select the region called Southeast Asia. That's what you have to select. But it doesn't mean that you have to always stick into that. You can pick whatever the region you prefer and then pick your service and continue with whatever the service you use. That's how the service or the environment has been arranged. And you can see Microsoft follows somewhere close to 90 compliance standards, which means you don't need to worry about most of the compliance issues. So everything has been handled, addressed. All you have to do is just go and make the request, fill some forms. When I say forms, it's going to be very set of small forms. You say that this is the name for my service and this is the configuration I want. This is how I want to make the payment for Microsoft. You select all of these things and click OK, you have the service. Okay, so that's the environment we see with Microsoft. Certain set of tools, applications, services available. So if you want to start with, let's say, a simple set of data sets, if you want to use relational databases for managing your data sets, so processing your data sets, manipulating your data set, Microsoft has given all sort of database management systems with this. SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, all type of things. And the good thing is most of the database management systems, or I can say most of the database types are available as a service. You don't need to worry about installing. I believe that everyone is familiar with these types like, infrastructure as service, platform as a service, software as a service, yes or no? Yes. So, most of the things are available as software as a service. When it comes to database, you can refer it as database as service, but you're okay to call it as software as a service. So all these database types are available. But how about data science and big data? For example, if you want to hold or store billions of records and you need compute power for processing all of these things, yes, Azure has all these capabilities and services. For example, now you're going to work with a big data set. Okay, even though we call this as a data science experiment, yes, you are going to handle a big data set. So you need big data environment. So you can, if you prefer, you can use Azure environment. I know that when it comes to big data experiments, data science experiments, most of the things are available, or most of the things have been given to us in open source flavor. So you're familiar with Hadoop, you're familiar with certain set of tools like Eclipse, Jupyter Notebook, Python, Scala, languages like that. So all these things are available. For example, if you want to get HD insight, or let me say it is as Hadoop. So if you want to get Hadoop cluster configured, within 5-10 minutes, you can get it configured within Azure. You can say that this is the configuration I want, and this is how I want to store my data. You can set certain set of input boxes and get it done. Okay? You can simply have your big data configuration, big data environment without spending much time. That's the support we get from Azure. I'm not going through all of these things because the whole idea is to educate you on the data science virtual machine, but these are the capabilities we see with Microsoft Azure platform. Right, some of the companies, all these are marketing slides, right, okay. So it shows like, how Fortune 500 companies are using Microsoft platform. So their day-to-day operations, their big data implementation, data science implementation, and all other type of OLTP or OLAP type of implementations. Okay, so let's talk about, we load everything. Let's talk about cloud scale analytics, right? Now, if you have a requirement for doing certain sort of analysis or the big data processing, what sort of things we have been given by Azure? First thing is the storage. Like we know that when it's come to big data processing, whether it's for data science or not, when it's come to big data processing, we look for two things. One is distributed processing, other one is distributed storage. I believe that everyone is familiar with these two, right? That's why we, like when it's come to on-prem, that's why we go for something like Hadoop. You can get the whole thing configured by yourself, or else you can go for vendors like Hortonworks, Cloudera, right? That's what we generally use. But when it's come to Microsoft Azure, we have certain set of storage environments which can be used for holding all big data data sets. So the standard or the general purpose storage is called as block storage. But in addition to that, we have something called Azure Data Lake. Are you familiar with data lake concept? Yes, okay, that's what we use for modern BI, modern data warehousing, specifically when you are going to hold unstructured data. So Microsoft supports the data's modern or the most I can say like unstructured world, or the support for unstructured world using Microsoft Azure Data Lake. So that can be used for storing data. It supports distributed storage. It supports distributed processing. Okay, you can get all sort of data, like whether it's structured, unstructured. For example, whether it is coming from a relational database, whether it's coming from an IoT device, it doesn't matter. You can simply pass everything, any type of data into this environment. Okay, so that's how Microsoft supports in order to storing data. But how do you get it processed? There are multiple ways of getting processed. If you are really familiar with open source Hadoop environment, you can simply use HD Insight. That allows you to get the Hadoop cluster created, and you can make the connectivity, or you can connect with the storage and get the data into Hadoop environment and process. You can use What are the preferred language? For example, we generally use Java, or we use Pig, Hive, that type of languages for processing data. Everything is available. In addition to that, I believe that everyone is familiar with Spark. Yes or no? Yes? You might be using Spark for whatever the experiment you have planned. If you are planning for Spark, right, it is also available as a part of Hadoop. That's one thing. And what's the commercialized version of Spark? Anyone? What's the name for commercialized version of Spark? Anyone? Databricks, okay? So Databricks also available as a part of Azure Data Platform. So if you prefer to use Databricks, yes, you can use that as well. So data processing, there are many ways of getting it done. And good thing with Databricks is you can use what are the preferred language. You can code with Python, you can code with Scala, you can code with R, you can code with Java. It's completely based on your familiarity. If you are really good at Python, you can simply use Python for getting your data processed. So once it is processed, you need to push it into another location, like for example, structured location. We might be using a relational database. You can call it as a data warehouse if you want, or you might be using database type which is based on MPP architecture. There are some database types based on MPP architecture, which stand for massively parallel processing. You can push your the results of this experiment. You can push that into a storage like that. You can go for Azure SQL Data Warehouse. You can go for Azure SQL Database, or you can simply push into a reporting and analytics environment, something like Power BI. Okay, so that's how Microsoft supports for data analytics. Right. Now let's quickly have a look on machine learning part. As you see, there are few items available, or the languages, tools available as a part of Azure. What's the most common tool you use for experiments, data science experiments? What is your favorite tool? I believe that you have already planned and decided what to be used, right? Yes or no? Or still it is undecided? So what's your favorite tool? Anyone? This is the problem with local audience. Eclipse, Jupyter Notebook, Databricks, anything else? Visual Studio, VS Code. Okay, let me ask the question in this way. So raise your hand if you have planned to use Jupyter Notebook or as a part of Anaconda. Can you raise your hand like this? Then I can. Okay, so most of you are going to use Anaconda or Jupyter Notebook, right? Okay, so that's one thing. But we have seen that most of the new experiments are being done with Databricks. That's something I have seen with some of the companies. Yes, they have been using Jupyter Notebook, and you get the similar facilities, similar environment. But the modern companies, or the new companies, or when it comes to new experiments or the modern experiments, they prefer to use Databricks. I don't see any difference in terms of the support. Yes, it is different, but in terms of executing code and writing codes and setting things up and all, it is sort of same, right? So you get all these facilities with Azure. You can completely stick into Azure, get the data push into Azure, and then you can use Jupyter Notebook. Microsoft has something called Azure Notebooks, which is exactly the copy of Jupyter Notebook. You can use it. You don't need to pay, but there are some limitations. For example, it will be set with, if I'm not mistaken, 4 GB RAM, and you are limited to 1 GB data size. Okay. But you get all these services. Some of them are free. For some of them, of course, you have to pay, right? Okay, now let's go into this virtual machine. Let's try to understand what is this and why we have to use this. I added these slides just to have a discussion, but I don't know whether we can really have a discussion because you don't talk, and I'm just talking and you're just listening. Right, let me ask this. Are you a data scientist? Raise your hand if you're a data scientist. Okay, there are a few. Right, raise your hand if you're a data engineer. I'm a data engineer, I'm not a data scientist. Who are you? Right, you are in this hackathon, not hackathon, Datathon, right? So you are working with data. How long you have been working with data? Okay, let me ask, are there any database administrator? It's an odd role now, like it's completely out. Do we have database administrators? No. Database, or not database, data engineers who really work with data? I mean, you're not creating interfaces, services and all. You go into data sets. It can be a database, it can be a data lake, it can be some sort of CSV files, Excel files, right? But you work with data. Are you a person like that? Yes or no? Okay, are you a software engineer? So raise your hand if you are a software engineer. Okay, I can't figure out the exact audience right now. Can someone tell me, just to understand the audience, nothing else? Any volunteer, can you tell me what's your role? Anyone?
I'm a software engineer.
You raise your hand. Thank you very much, sir. So I know you're a software engineer. Other than that, right? So we have few data scientists, we have software engineers. Other than that, anyone from this table? What's your role? Student? Okay, raise your hand if you're a student. Sorry, I completely forgot to ask. Okay, extremely sorry. Okay, I should have asked that, before asking all of these things. So we have certain set of students. So, okay, in that case, yes, your role is a student. Right, okay. So remember, even though we have a role called data scientist, this data is not limited to data science or data scientists. We have generally three type of audience, like information consumer, basic users, power users. Of course, data scientist comes under power users, but it doesn't mean that experiments are being done only by data scientists. Okay, so everyone can do it. Why? We don't, like earlier, if I want to do some experiments, there are so many things to be thought, right? But here, when you think about modern technologies, the platforms, languages, we don't need to think much. We can simply start it, right? So we are not going to talk about data science here, but we need to understand that the component, the service I'm going to show you, that is not limited to data scientists. Okay, if you're a student, if you're a data engineer, if you're a software engineer, DBA, you can use it, right? So we have to work with data. This says I'm a data scientist, but I can be a data engineer as well. It's all about experimenting with data. I need to do some experiments. The whole idea is to find some insights, something we have not seen before, something we can use for improving our business operations. Okay, that's the whole idea of it. If somebody says that, okay, I'm doing an experiment, all I need to find the trend related to revenue, that's not data science, that's not BI. Okay, we have to go beyond predictive analytics, we have to go beyond prescriptive analytics. That's the whole idea of this, and that's why Dialog has organized this. You have a good opportunity to work with a large data sets. I prefer to work with telco data. I have worked with one of the telco companies before. So I know the size of it. I know the complexity of it. I'm a bit familiar with CDR records, and I'm sure that you'll be getting CDR records, right? They're getting CDR records, something else? Okay, right, okay. But that's really interesting. You will see a lot of things that can be taken out from your data set, right? So it's all about finding insight. And the biggest issue we see, right? For example, if let's say I'm a data scientist. When I call myself a data scientist, it doesn't mean that I know all software tools available. I know all platform available, right? There are certain set of platforms that have to be used for specific operation. I might be processing certain set of data. Now I have a requirement for publishing this. How can I publish it? Okay, now company might say that, okay, our platform is this. I'm not familiar with that technology. Okay, so in that case, in order to write some codes for publishing it, I will be definitely having some difficulties. Other thing is, like if I'm processing large data set, how do I get large data set to my desktop laptop? And there are some other issues, like now, since we have students here, I'm sure that you have started coding with Python. Yes, every university, do something with Python. Yes or no? Yes, right, okay. Are you using something like Scala? I prefer Scala over Python, that's why I'm asking. Anyone? Scala? No, right. Are you doing anything with Spark? Anyone use Spark? Okay, few. Right. Now, the thing is, if you try to use all of these things, you might use one language for extracting data from your source. Let's say Dialog has given data sets in CSV format. You might be using one technology for extracting data and do some cleansing part and put it to another container for experiments. That you will see that, okay, if I use this technology, yes, I can do it in a very easy way. I'm not going to see any difficulties. But when it comes to experiment, like you will be creating a model, you'll be doing, you'll be teaching your machine using training part, you'll be evaluating using testing part, and you'll be doing all sort of data science work. Then you will say, okay, I'm going to use this tool for doing that part. The thing is, if you try to have all these tools in your laptop, desktop, you will be getting so many issues. You might install Python 2 in this machine, and then you try to install Scala different version. And when you install it and open your shell, it might say, okay, Python version is not compatible with this. Have you ever experienced something like that? I have enough of situation like that. Okay, even recently I experienced something like that specifically with Scala and Python. So I had to install Python 3 and go back to Python 2, when it's come to I don't want to tell names of the OS, but some OS, like even though we install, it is not getting completely uninstalled. Okay, so you might have to format again in order to start all of these things. So these are some of the difficulties we see when we start an experiment. Okay, you will be spending 2-3 days on this, and you will be spending 1 or 2 days just for the experiment, right? And even after the experiment, you will continuously experiencing issues. How can I publish it? How can I share it? I want to take this model out. I want to create this type of model. I want to push this model to one of the environment where I can configure it as a web service. You are going to experience all these issues. Okay? So how do we resolve these things? How can I handle all these addresses? If somebody can give me a laptop, okay, or desktop that has all sort of software I need in terms of my experiment, and everything is configured, right? I'm not going to see any sort of compatibility issue. If I'm getting a box like that, I don't want to worry about that part. I open my favorite tool, do the data extraction, do the cleansing part, and create my box. My data set is ready. Transform, cleanse, and it is structured for my experiments. I open my second tool, and then I connect with that box and get data into my environment. Let's say I'm going to use a specific category like supervised, unsupervised, like you name it. You take it, and then I'm going to pick one of the machine learning technique and algorithm. I'll be using all of these things because I don't want to worry about adding packages, libraries, configuring tools, adding switches. No, everything is pre-configured for me. If I'm getting a box like that, I'll be the happiest data engineer. Okay, I can become simply I can call myself as a data scientist because everything has been handled by someone. Okay, but there should be a person who can give all of these things to us. In that case, Microsoft is there. Microsoft can give you a box that has everything. Okay, that is called as Microsoft Data Science Virtual Machine. Clear, right? You get pre-configured environment specifically for data science experiment. Okay, that's why Microsoft Dialog has decided to give you this box, and you don't need to worry about any configuration, installation. Almost all famous or the required tools, languages, platform, IDs, everything is available with this virtual machine. Clear? Okay. So let's try to understand what is this DSVM, Data Science Virtual Machine. The first one, it says it's analytics desktop. You get a box, right? It is not exactly a physical desktop, but you get a box configured in the cloud. All you need is the facility to connect with the virtual machine. So since most of you have worked with virtual machine, you know that you can remotely connect with the virtual machine and connect, get into the, log into the virtual machine. So if your machine has enough capabilities for connecting with remote desktop or remote virtual machine, that's all, right? So it's something like you're working with the desktop, which is configured for data science experiments. Data science training and education. This is heavily being used. Even with my data science workshop, we use this. okay? Because I don't want ask my participant to install this and that, and then handle issues related to compatibility issues and software issues and all. We can simply get this thing, like within 5-10 minutes we can get this thing created, and then I can use for education and training programs or the workshops. See the third one, it says on-demand elastic capacity. Now, if you have, just raise your hand if you have already done some data science experiments. Okay. We have no way of discussing the threshold for determining whether it's complex or sort of a simple one, but raise your hand if you believe that your experiment is complex, just to understand. Raise your hand if your experiment is, when I say complex, most of them are unstructured and you have been working with billions of records. Let's take those two criteria for determining the complexity. Raise your hand if you have done something like that. Yes. Okay, right. So the biggest issue, if I ask you, sir, like, what sort of issue you have been experienced considering those two factors?
We get a data set from university.
Okay.
Like network data.
Right.
So like we have to filter it, cleanse it, and
So you had to do a lot of pre-processing part, right?
and takes a lot of time to do that. And
Because of the compute power, right? Okay, so that's something we have seen with big data world. I don't want to have high-end server for doing all of these things because I might be creating a model that can be used for my application. Okay, let's say it's a predictive experiment. All I need is to get my model created. But in order to get the model created, I might have to go through a large number of observations or large number of examples. So in that case, can I use my laptop or can I ask my IT department to get a server arranged for me? In most of the cases, it's not going to work, okay? So you can go for cloud environment. For example, if you go for Hadoop, right, whether it's cloud or on-prem, if you try to configure Hadoop, you are getting some issues. The number one issue you experience with Hadoop is, at the design time, you need to decide the number of nodes, okay? Yes, there are ways of getting it changed, but generally, at the design time, you have to configure the number of data nodes. So once it is configured, it's a bit difficult to change it based on the workload you get. But if you go for something like this, Azure Data Science Virtual Machine, let's say you go for a small spec, right, based on your budget, and the good thing is you are not going to pay to Microsoft for high-end servers, because you have selected a small one and you started this small one, you'll be paying a very small amount, okay? But suddenly, in order to get your model trained, okay, you decide to get more and more examples, more and more observations, which means you are going to load billions of records for doing the training part. Now you feel like, okay, the machine I have configured for this experiment is not enough. How do I do it? This environment allows you to get the whole the machine scaled out on demand. Okay, so if you feel like, okay, RAM is not enough, CPU is not enough, you can go into the configuration section and you can simply expand it. You can scale out. Okay. Once it is done, once your training part is done with your billions records, you don't need that capacity. If you continuously use the capacity, of course, you'll be continuously paying Microsoft. In this case, you don't need to pay. You get I don't think you will be billed for this, right? But if you're going to use it future, right? Once it is done, you can again release all the resources back to the pool. So it's completely on demand, and you'll be paying only for the resources that have used for certain time period. That's how Microsoft calculates the bill. Okay. So the third one is the really important thing when you consider about this type of experiments. Deep learning. So anyone has plan for going into this, like, it's all about deep learning, or you'll be just implementing your standard data science experiments? How things have been planned? Have you seen data sets yet? Oh, okay. So you have no idea. So you might be going for deep learning, right? So there are certain set of there are certain set of libraries available, and you have to use different infrastructure for deep learning, specifically if you are going to work with videos, images, things like that. So when it comes to Microsoft Data Science Virtual Machine, you have actually two flavors. One is CPU based, other one is, anyone knows, like, what's the technology, or GPU, right? So you have to use GPU based machines. So if you plan for deep learning, we recommend you to go for GPU, right? Again, when you get this DSVM, there are two categories. One is based on Windows, other one is based on Linux. I'm not too sure which category or which one you'll be getting. But remember, when it comes to Windows, you have to switch from CPUs to GPU. But when it comes to Linux, it is by default GPU. That's how it comes. So are they getting GPUs? Not too sure. Okay, right. So it depends on the data set you have to work with. You might get GPU configured one, or you might get CPU configured one. Okay. So anyway, if you have planned for doing anything with deep learning, yes, this virtual machine fully supports on that. You can do any type of experiments in terms of deep learning. Examples, templates, and get started. Now, there can be a situation you need to do a quick test, right? I have an idea like this. Yes, Dialog has given this data set, but that's not the whole experiment we want to do. We want to do something, small, right? I want to get this part done. I want to get this part tested. So how can I get my environment created? Again, you can use something like this. Okay, you get your virtual machine up and running. Within 2-3 minutes, you can get it created. And then you do the experiments, and then you can shut it down. So that can be heavily used for testing, testing, or you can use for small experiments. And the last one, highly parallelized. It's all about distributed processing. You don't need to worry about creating multiple threads for doing distributed processing. This environment automatically handles it. And if you want, you can extend it to some other environment as well. For example, you can extend to Databricks, you can extend to Hadoop, right? You are not going to see Hadoop inside it, you are not going to see Databricks inside it, but Hadoop and Databricks are available as services in Azure. But if you need more and more power, you can use that environment for processing your data. Okay, clear? So these are the reasons for going into a virtual machine called DSVM, Data Science Virtual Machine. Right, how everything works. So the middle part represents your virtual machine. And the left side, it talks about data storage and how you can get data into this environment. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I was told by Microsoft that you will not be able to connect to external data sources from this virtual machine. It will be restricted. Okay, so you don't need to worry about this part because it will be closed. Right, you will not be able to connect with any external data sources. But just remember, in future, if you're going to use these virtual machines for any type of experiment, and if your data is in your on-prem server, on-prem Hadoop environment, cloud Hadoop environment, data lake, or relational database, you can simply make the connection and get the data into your virtual machine, right? Once everything is done, if you want to publish your trained model to a web service, or a platform where you can open it for a different audience, that is also available, but I think that's also not available for you in this exercise, but in generally that also possible. Okay, right, what are things you get with this virtual machine? You can see all your favorite languages, tools, platforms, technologies. Anyone see anything missing? Like, now some of you have done some experiments. You have used some tools, some technologies. Do you see any missing technology, missing tool, missing platform? I don't think so, unless you are an exceptional case, right? All the common tools, languages have been added to this, right? It's very difficult to see a person that says, okay, I have been using this for my data science experiments and it is not available with Microsoft Data Science Virtual Machine. This is fully loaded, right? Everything is available. So as you see, like, development tools, Visual Studio, Jupyter Notebook, RStudio, all these things are available. Data platform, you have SQL Server if you want, right? I don't know whether you're going to use any relational databases, but if you're getting a backup of relational database, yes, it can be restored to your SQL Server database because it has the developer edition. In addition to that, you can see icons for connecting, you can see icons for Azure storages, but you're not going to see those storages inside the virtual machine. What it says is you can connect with those, okay? And then some of the tools that can be used for visualization, you might be using your notebook environment for visualization, but in addition to that, you have Power BI. I don't know whether you have used Power BI. That is one of the BI client tools available. And Power BI is Microsoft BI client tool. It is not as matured as something like Tableau, right? But it can be used for all sort of visualization, right? I have used this heavily, but if you are thinking about specific visualization, you might not be able to use it. There are some custom visuals as well. You can, go for marketplace, look for visuals, and if you feel like that is what you have to use for this experiment, you can get it downloaded and edit, right? Just raise your hand if you have used Power BI before. Okay, good, right, okay. So Power BI is loaded with that. I noticed that the latest VM has, Microsoft releases Power BI every month, okay. When I create the virtual machine day before yesterday, I noticed that it has the older one, but it doesn't mean that you need to stick into it. You can go into the, you can open the browser and get it loaded or get it downloaded, okay. But, in terms of creating reports or visualization, you can use it, because when I say it has the old version, we are talking about 1 or 2 months old version, right? It's not about 6 months, 1 year old version, right? Yeah, these are the facilities you have. And when it comes to this virtual machine, you have multiple editions. Okay, some of the editions are, okay, as I told you, there are Windows editions, there are Linux editions. In addition to that, you have editions configured for special things. For example, if you select the second one, it is machine learning for Linux. And Linux one, if I'm not mistaken, there are 2 versions. One's for Ubuntu, and another one is, what's the other OS? So, yeah, that's the one. So you have both versions. In addition to that, you have, you can see deep learning virtual machine, and what else? Microsoft Machine Learning Server, multiple versions. Likewise, there are multiple editions, right? You can pick the edition. So I believe that you'll be picking either Linux or Windows one. So this slide set, okay, this slide shows top 10, you're going to see the first 5, and then the next one is the next 5. So this talks about what are the things you can do with this data science virtual machine. I'm not going through all of these things. If I look at that side, I'm going to miss my mic, right? Okay, so let me go through a couple of things. You can see the first one is all about explore data and develop models using, locally on this machine using ML server, Python. So what it says is the first point. What it says is, if you use this virtual machine, you can, get your modeling part done using your favorite language. That's what it says, right? You have Jupyter Notebook. I believe that most of you have decided to use Jupyter Notebook, so you'll be continuing with the notebook, and it supports multiple Python version, and I'll open one of the notebooks and show you. Just started my virtual machines, okay. And the good thing is, you can, once the model is done, let's say you have done the evaluation and you are happy with this, and you know that this guy has the knowledge for doing what are the things we have planned. Yes, you can promote him, promote the code set or the model as a trained model. So do you want to publish it? Yes, you can do it through the notebook itself, or whatever the idea you use. So likewise, there are multiple things you can do. It is not going to be limited for 10 things, but most important or most 10 things that have to be highlighted have been added to this slide. Okay, so I'm not going through all these things. I'll be sharing this slide set. You can go through it and see. Okay, let's go through this slide. Okay, now we were talking about data scientists, right? But I said that this is not only for data scientists, right? This can be used by both data scientists and data engineers. right? In addition to that, if you are a developer, yes, you can use it because it has Visual Studio, it has SQL Server, it has some other database management studio. If you use the Linux flavor, Linux version, still you have the Visual Studio. It comes as VS Code, right? It's a cross-platform IDE, so you can use it for coding with C#, VB.NET, Java, Python. You can use this environment for coding with any type of languages. So it is available for data engineers as well. And you can see that I have mentioned both DBA, database administrator, and system engineer. So if somebody wants to do some experiments with some database services, database technologies, database techniques, yes, this VM can be used. System engineer, for example, let's say your company has Azure platform and you have your own tenant. You need to manage it through certain set of tools. You don't like to get those tools installed to your machine. You can get this VM, and this VM has all the tools like PowerShell, Azure CLI, things like that. Because since those tools are available, you can use those tools for connecting with your tenant and do like let's say you need to manage authentication, you need to manage your Azure Key Vault, you need to manage your certificates. Everything can be managed within using this VM. So you don't need to install anything into your machine. Okay. So even though I have listed only 4 roles, again it is not limited. For example, let's say you are not a technical person, but you like to do some testing with data science. You like to learn data science. Get this VM, go into it. You'll be seeing a lot of examples. You don't need to write codes. You go into it and open, since your preferred tools is Jupyter Notebook, so open Jupyter Notebook. You will see some examples. You can open your notebook and start executing one by one. Okay, so it is not just for these 4 roles. It can be used by anyone. Clear that part? Right. So how do you get this one created? And you are not going to do this. I'll quickly go through these slides and then do the demo. Because you get a ready-made virtual machine. You're not going through this. But if you have a requirement for creating the virtual machine, all your first thing is you need to have an account, you need to have a subscription. You'll log into your Azure portal, go to virtual machine, or you can look for data science virtual machine. You'll be seeing multiple editions. Pick one, and then second part is picking the spec, right? Whether you want CPU, GPU, you pick it. And for example, if you select CPU, you will get large number of specification, various type of series, D series, F series, things like that. And you pick number of CPUs you want, virtual CPUs, and the amount of RAM you need. You can select all of these things. So the facility has been given for selecting all of these things. Once everything is selected, you have to do few more inputs, like you have to name your virtual machine. You want to, you can say that, okay, I want to make sure that this virtual machine is part of my network. So you will be configuring VNet. You don't need to worry about this. All you have to do is, yes, you have to say, I want to make sure this is going to be a part of my VNet, something like that. You create your user ID, password, and select the size. That's all. You click OK. Within 2-3 minutes, your virtual machine is ready. Clear that part? Right. So these slides explain how it can be created. But let's see the demo. This is what I'm going to do. I'll open my virtual machine, and we are not going to create an experiment. I'll open a very simple thing I have created using Jupyter Notebook, because I thought that you'll be using Jupyter Notebook. Because of that, I didn't use anything else. I'll open a notebook and show you a small code. Okay. So after that, we can have a QA session, and then if you have any doubts or if you need any things to be clarified, we can discuss it. Okay. Right. Let me open my virtual machine. Okay, so this is what I get. Okay, this is what I get when I open my virtual machine. So I have logged into my virtual machines. You can see it's all up. It's it's basically you connect with the remote machine, right? All you have to know is the IP address, and you connect with your remote machine. Now, if it is Windows, I can simply use my Windows machine for connecting with it. But if it is Linux, you have to use one of your favorite, like one of your SSH client. Okay, it's up to you. There are multiple SSH clients. You can use what are the preferred one. So once you log in, this is what you're going to see. My virtual machine is Windows 2016 based machine. It's not a Linux machine. Okay. So as you see, you have all these things installed pre-configured. So this is your Jupyter notebook, but if you prefer to start with Anaconda, that's also available. Okay. If I make a search, for Anaconda, I can see that as well, right? So let me open Jupyter notebook. So, I don't want to explain this part because I know that all of you are really familiar with this, but I'll quickly show you the code I have written. So this code has been written for, discussing regression machine learning technique. So what it does is it gets data from this CSV file and go through certain number of features or the columns, and we take one column. It's all about vehicles. So it has various characteristics of vehicles, and it has a column called price, and that has been marked as the label. So it's all about creating a model using all these observation or examples, okay, and see whether we can use that model for predicting the price. Okay, so I'm sure that you all are familiar with this type of things, right? Okay, so I don't want to go through cell by cell. I'll show you or discuss the most important part of this. Now when it's come to important libraries, right? You know that some of the libraries are not available as built-in or the default libraries. You have to attach them. You need to add them, right? But when it's come to this virtual machine, you don't need to worry about that part. Most common things have been added. But if you are going to use an extra thing, something not is something we don't consider as a common one, yes, then you need to add it. But other than that, all common packages have been loaded, or common libraries have been loaded to this. Okay, so this part is all about importing things. If you have used Jupyter Notebook, you know that you can press Control Enter and Shift Enter. All the facilities are available, but since the keyboard is there, I'll try my best to use the mouse. So let me say run cell. So I'll be running the first one. As you see, it is getting executed. And then still being executed. Then okay, next cell is all about just reading it, and I'm loading into this. I'm using pandas data frames. So I'm loading data into pandas data frame. Click on it, run the cell, and once it is loaded, I should be able to execute this and see the result. So this is the result set I have. So I have not large number of columns. I have set certain number of columns, and the last column is the log price, and that's what I'm going to mark it as a label. Okay, and generally when you do this type of experiments, first thing is you need to do the feature engineering part, right? You'll be handling categorical columns, you'll be handling numerical columns, you'll be applying various techniques, something like encoding, adding dummy variables, scaling. There are a lot of things. So this virtual machine can support all of these things. Actually, Jupyter supports all of these things, right? Or whatever the language you have used with the libraries, that supports. But what we have to remember is you are in the virtual machines. Okay, you don't need to worry about the compatibility issues and all. And if I just open the kernel menu and show you, type of kernels available, you can see there are about based on the edition you have picked, you will be seeing these kernel types. Okay. So this has been open using Python 2 because I was trying something else which can be executed only using Python 2. But in addition to that, you can see Python 3 with Spark local, and this has the local Spark engine. In addition to that, you can see it supports Azure Machine Learning Studio and Python 2 as well. So this is what I have selected. Let me execute few ones. So I'm just trying to handle categorical columns. I'm trying to implement one-hot encoding for categorical columns. I'm not going to discuss these things, but let me run cell by cell. This is what we see, and there's a column called body style, and I can execute this one. And this is the result of it. So likewise, I'm doing all of these things to get my data set prepared. Okay, so you'll be having large number of cells like that with multiple codes. You can have one notebook or multiple notebooks. So this environment supports for creating all of these things. So I'm applying this one-hot encoding for one of the columns, and this is the result set you are going to see. And then, sorry, this is all about encodings. This is actually one-hot encoding. So I believe that you are familiar with this type of experiments. This is all about fetch engineering. And then I'm applying same technique for all my categorical columns. That's what we do with this. And then I'm testing this. I don't want to go through this. I'm taking other numerical columns into my NumPy array. All good. Let me check the shape. I can see 195 records is 17 columns. And finally, I take my label, right? This is my label. I'm not explaining the whole thing, just to tell you what, how you can do all of these things using this virtual machine. And let me continue. Right, this part, it's all about splitting the data set, right? You're going to have training set and testing set. There are multiple techniques for splitting it. So I have used one of the techniques. And then I applying scaling mechanism because I want to make sure all numeric values are scaled. Done. And then finally I train my model. Okay. Once it is done, I can check the intercept and coefficient. So let me see whether everything works. Yes, this is my B0 and these are my B1, B2, B3. I believe that you are familiar with these regressions. So you're trying to form a formula like in simple terms, fx equal B0 plus B1 x1 plus B2 x2, something like that. So this is how you come out with these values, right? And if you're happy with these things, you can check your measures. These are the measures we use specifically, RMC and R2. These are the two things we use, or the COD. We call this as COD. And if you're happy with all of these things, you can use this as your predictive model, right? So I can test it by passing some values. So I'm going to use this as my model. I've called the predict function, pass in these values, and I'm printing the predicted value. Let me execute this and see. So I get this value. Okay, that's a predictive value. So do not worry about the code. Do not worry about this data set. So this is what you are going to do with your virtual machine. You might be using RStudio as well, right? Remember, RStudio is available only with Linux version. You cannot use Windows version if you have planned for RStudio. Okay, that's something you need to remember. It's up to you. So in my case, I prefer Python. Okay, in my case, I prefer Python because my background is C#, SQL, things like that. But some people prefer language. R language. So in that case, if you or your team has planned to use R and RStudio, you can execute R codes with this. But what I'm saying is, if you want to use RStudio, you need to make sure that your virtual machine is configured with Linux. Okay. In addition to that, there are some codes you need to connect with. I don't have this workspace. For example, if I believe that this model is my final model, I have done the evaluation. Like this evaluation is done. I want to publish this model as a web service, then everyone can consume, everyone can connect with the web service, pass inputs and get the output generated. I don't want to use different tools for publishing it. I can use a code like this. Okay, I'm getting this error because I have not loaded these libraries. I can simply publish to Azure portal itself. I can publish this model, then this model is going to be available as a web service. Okay, this is what we generally do, right? Data scientists work alone, right? If you go back to 5-10 years, data scientist is an isolated person. He doesn't like to work with the team. I know that there are few data scientists here. I believe that you prefer to work with the team, but I have seen some data scientists, they don't like to work with the team. They like to get their environment covered, and then they focus, and then they go into the machine and then start coding. Okay, that's their passion, right? But in modern environment, it's all about collaboration. You should be able to, I should be able to contribute to your experiment, and you should be able to contribute to my experiment. So collaboration has to be there, right? So in that case, once it is done, if I feel like, model is done, right, I should publish it, yes, I can simply publish it. Clear that part? Okay, right. So this is what we have to, this is what I have planned in terms of this presentation. We can start Q&A session if you have questions only.
So like after publishing this, is it exposed as a REST API?
Yes, it is actually available as a web service, and you can use any language because it is available as REST API as well. For example, once it is published, you can see, like, let's say you are going to call this web service using Visual Studio or using some other language. This Azure platform gives you the code, C# code, Python code. If I'm not mistaken, R code is there as well. Okay, so it can be simply accessed using whatever the platform, whatever the language you prefer. But in this exercise, you will not be able to publish it. Okay.
Do we have the admin rights to install it? Can you do pip install?
You can do anything. Like now, for example, in order to do this, I loaded this. Okay, Azure ML. Okay, I loaded Azure. Okay, let me repeat the question. I don't know whether everyone heard the question. Let me repeat the question. The first question was like, once it is published, whether it is available for accessing using REST API, right? Yes, it is available. You can use any platform, any language for accessing the web service. You pass your input, you get the predicted output. That's possible. Second question is, do we have admin rights for this virtual machine? Generally you have, but I don't know whether it's going to be limited in this case. Okay, but like for example, but I think this is possible. If you really need an external library to be loaded, you can talk to the team and get it added. I'm sure that it is possible. Yeah, okay, so you get the facility. Any other question? Yes, sir. So your question is whether we can run on GPU? Yes. So as I told you, virtual machine is available for both types, CPU, GPU. Okay, so if you want to change, you need to go to the portal, not here. For example, let me show you. Okay, this is my Azure portal. So this is my virtual machine. I can go for size, right? I can, let me clear the filter. I can select N series. It's based on the region I'm in. So most of the N series are GPU enabled ones. F series, okay, so I have selected the Windows one. Shall I quickly show you how to get the GPU part rather than changing this? Okay, you're asking whether I can change from CPU to GPU, right? Okay, so it is possible. I should be able to see the N series part. Okay, so one more thing on this. Now, it looks like I'm not seeing N series here, right? There could be two reasons. One is the region support, right? For some of the series are not available for the region I have selected. Other one is when I start with this, I need to, if I go for D series, that's the lowest one, I might not be able to upgrade it. Okay, but if you go for mission critical ones like something like F series, then you will be able to do it. But for some reason, I'm not seeing it. I cannot exactly tell the reason for this, but I'm sure that if you go for something like F series, and let's say you created the first part as F series, then you will be able to convert it.
I have small suggestion.
Yes.
There are lot of regions, you know. So if you have a service or website to show which virtual machine type is available on which regions, it will be very helpful to find
Which virtual machine is available for which region?
which region. For example, to check whether the GPU version is available on
Okay, right. Okay, so actually it's in one of the Microsoft documents. Okay, I can pull out, I can pull that page and share the link. There is a page that has all these details.
I found that website also, but that's not real time.
No, okay, what you're saying is while the virtual machine is running, whether you can change it, for certain things, no. Okay, this,
To check whether in which region the GPU machines are available.
okay, so you want to know, like, if I go to Southeast Asia, whether we have GPU editions or not. That's what you want to know, right?
Web page, if you can see all the regions and available type of
Okay,
information.
right. I'm sure that there's a web page that explains all of these things. I'll see whether I can find it, and then I'll share it with Microsoft. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
Like the exact specs of the VM that we are getting?
You are getting that I.
So, end of the session, so we are in the it's a 84 machine, 56 GB
That will be enough in that case. It depends on the data sets, the size of the data set. Yes, sir.
Is Microsoft Power BI available on the Linux virtual machine?
No, it is not available. In the Linux one, you're not going to see Office, like Excel, Word, things like that. You're not going to see it. And Power BI, no. And SQL Server, machine learning service, no. There are certain things that are not available with Linux.
So one team gets one VM, right?
Yes, that's how it has been planned.
and 1 VM, we are giving two access for the two member can access the
So at any given time, only two can work with the virtual machine.
How does Teams platform include that in a code?
So that's why initially we have the code form, right? So you are supposed to say which one you are preferred, which platform. I think based on that, each team will receive their preference VM.
Like one team gets one VM or five?
No, one VM per team.
So there will be 21 virtual machines, okay, and one virtual machine can be used by two members at any given time. You'll be getting only two logins. I can hear so many questions now. So get all your questions clarified, like the Microsoft team is there, Dialog team is there, and I might be able to support. Any other questions? And if you try to, yes, sir.
Well, it's not a question, but rather a suggestion. Since only two people can work on the VM at one given time, and since
I
we
can
don't
understand.
have the data sets, that's going to be a bit of a problem. So can I suggest the data team to at least submit a dummy data set, which we can download to our machine and work on it, maybe run a couple of experiments and decide the pipeline and all these things, which will boost the time, because the other three members will have a problem since they don't have the data access. Also, can you increase the number of plugins?
Okay, so the two questions, right? Can we make the data set available before we start the Datathon, and can we increase the number of logins?
No, not before we start, like,
Before we start the,
people can access it.
yes.
The other three, if they can have at least a dummy set to work on. Okay, just one clarity, is that, will we be able to download that dummy data set to our laptops? Yeah.
So everyone heard about it, right? So it's all about dummy data set, whether we can see dummy data before you start the real experiment. Yes, you are going to see dummy data set, and yes, you will be able to get the copy of dummy data set into your environment, your machine. And you can analyze it, and you can decide your flow for doing all the testing, cleansing, transforming, modeling. You can plan it. Yes. Yes, you have the bash shell, yes. Generally you can, but I think it is going to be restricted.
From your local machine, you are allowed to upload it. Your data set, your Python logic, or whatever things you can upload. But you are restricted on the download from the actual data set. You can do whatever things in your local machine and you can upload. That's the idea.
So even though only two persons can access the virtual machine, if you have the dummy data set, you can use your environment for doing the experiment, right? And once it is done, you can get your Python code uploaded to a virtual machine and then start working with whatever the data set, original data set. Yes. Okay, so the question is, do we know the size of the dummy data set? What could be the approximate size dummy data set? I think that will be easily accommodated to the your laptop.
Actual one is slightly above 1 GB total data set, but the dummy data set will be much smaller. No, it's just about 1 to 2 GB. Yeah.
Something like PySpark or other in that case, or we have the
You have 56 GB, I think, because we have run the same logics in the same environment, so we are confident that this is more than enough.
That's all. So everyone is ready to do the experiment, right? You have 2 more days, right? 1 more day, 2 more days. Any other question? Okay, but if you have any other question, yes, still the team is there. You can ask question, but my part is done. I believe that my part is done. So thank you very much, and all the best. Make sure that you create something really, really innovative, okay, that can be used by the country. All the best.